Hello again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher, and this is tips number 809. That's part 3 of a 3-part video on South Bend 9-inch lathe gearing and gearboxes and all of that. Now you'll notice that there is no quick change gearbox on this model B 9-inch lathe. Well, I want to talk about the gearboxes now because I've shown you in the previous 2 videos, make sure you watch them, how to change the gears and the gear train on the end here to vary your feeds and your threads per inch and all of that stuff. So in this one, again, I wanted to talk about the quick change gearbox, which is too good to be true. I think you can see in the last 2 videos what a struggle it is to change the gears and what a great benefit it is to have a quick change gearbox. Well, since this lathe does not have one, I'm going to refer to one of my older videos that's already done, and in a few minutes here I'm just going to switch to that video and you're going to see it pretty much in its entirety, although it will be edited a little bit. But you might notice that it's an older style camera that I use. But I'm going to explain what the gearbox is and how to set it, but it's so simple compared to what we have done here. So let's get into that video. But there's a couple other older videos of mine that you might also want to watch. So here is a picture of one of those. Take a look at that, and I will put links in the description, hopefully, for all of the videos in this series. I think this is going to be quite beneficial to you guys that have South Bend lathes. If you enjoy this video, you might well enjoy tips number 327, where I show the inside, the working parts, and all of the gears of the quick change gearbox. This is the quick change gearbox on a South Bend 9-inch lathe. Not all lathes have a quick change gearbox. Some of you may have a cigar box that contains a dozen or more gears that are used to change the speed of the lead screw for your feeds and for threading. Now, if you have that, I'm not going to cover that. There is a diagram on your lathe telling you how to change those, and it is not a fast thing or a quick thing to do. And therein is the reason for the name quick change gearbox, because we can change the settings in a matter of 10 seconds rather than 10 minutes or more. The purpose of the quick change gearbox is to allow you to change the speed of the lead screw, and we have a series of gears that transmit the power from the spindle gear right here through the feed reverse gears, one or the other, down through this chain of gears and into the gearbox. And then from there we have approximately 25 or more different ratios to change the speed of the lead screw. By changing the speed at which the lead screw rotates, we can in turn change the speed at which the carriage travels for 2 purposes. One is to change the rate of feed longitudinally or for the cross feed, and also to change the number of threads per inch that we are able to thread by the single point method. Inside of the quick change gearbox there's many gears, and in order to shift the gears we have 2 tumblers here, and the tumblers can be dropped by pulling on the knob, and then we can slide it down into any of the other positions that we desire. Now, if they do not go in, and sometimes you got to wiggle them a little bit, if it doesn't go in, turn the chuck with your hand and you will feel the gears mesh. Never shift your gears while the lathe is running. This is strictly with the motor off. Now, if you have trouble shifting the tumbler on this side and it doesn't go in, notice I'm using my hand below too, but if it doesn't go in, then just take your fingers and turn the lead screw a little bit and you will feel the gears engage. So that is how you do the actual shifting. Now let's take a closer look at the box. The left-hand tumbler has 5 possible positions, and they are A through E. The right-hand tumbler has 8 positions, and they are in line with the columns that you see here of numbers. So when you look at the grid here, you have to decide what speed or what number of threads per inch that you desire to cut. So let's start out with threading. Let's take a moment to read a couple things that are on this label here. One, right here it says threads per inch and feeds in thousandths, and that's referring to the 2 different numbers that are in each little grid. Now over here, and you got to turn your head sideways, and it may not show up on the video, but it says that the power cross feeds are 3 times the longitudinal feeds. So when we're using cross feed, whatever this decimal number is, you're going to have to multiply that times 3 in your head to determine what the actual feed rate is. For a moment, let's ignore this very top line here, and we'll start on the second line. And if we have our tumbler in the left-hand tumbler in the A position and the right-hand tumbler in this column here, we will be threading 8 threads per inch if we have our feed change lever in the middle position. Now if we have our feed change lever in the top position and we're going to feed longitudinally, then our feed rate is going to be right here in decimal 0.0427. So that's about 42 thousandths of feed that we will get. That is, the tool will advance into the work 42 thousandths for each revolution of the spindle, and that's a real coarse feed. Now if the feed change lever was in the down position and we were feeding with the cross feed, it would be 3 times that. In other words, 3 times 47, which is almost 150 thousandths, which would be a very, very coarse feed that you probably never would use. If you were going to thread 13 threads per inch, which would be a common one, half 13, we would want the left-hand tumbler to be in the A position, which it presently is, and the right-hand tumbler to be in line with this column of 13. The feed rate, if it's remained in that position, would be about 20 thousandths, which would be a rather usable feed rate. If you were making a finishing cut with the longitudinal feed and you desired a nice finish, you probably would want to be in the range down here of about 4 thousandths feed, and that would be in this column, and it would be in the left-hand tumbler in the C position. A few minutes ago I told you to ignore the top line here, and the reason for that is that it isn't too often that you would be threading anything this coarse or using that coarse of a feed, but if you wanted to use anything in that column, we have to change one gear. Notice that it says stud gear right up here, and normally we have a 20 stud gear installed in the machine. The 40 stud gear has probably never been used in the life of this machine. I would doubt very much that it had, but let's take just a moment to show you how to change those 2 gears, and it's pretty easy to do. We're now looking at the gear train on the end of the lathe, and this is the 20-tooth stud gear right here that I'm touching with the pencil. Here is the 40-tooth stud gear, and that's just in storage right now like a spare tire. It probably has never been moved on this lathe, but notice that it's not in the gear train at all. So in order to switch gears, you would have to take this one off just by loosening this nut and take the 20-tooth gear off and switch the 2. Now in order to do that, of course, you'd also have to drop, this is called the banjo, drop this whole thing down a little bit and install the new gear and bring it back up into a proper mesh. Now when you mesh those gears, don't bring them all the way so that they're touching the bottom of the teeth, but a little bit of a gap, just using some common sense there.
So that is how to change the stud gears. And then if you put the 40 tooth up here, you need to put the 20 tooth down here in storage also to act as a spacer before you tighten this up. In an earlier video, I mentioned that you should keep the feed reverse lever in the neutral position. That's the center position. That takes all of these gears and the quick change gearbox out of use so that only the spindle is turning. That prevents wear on all of these gears, and it also reduces the noise as you're cutting. And there are times when you do not need any of the gears. For instance, when you're doing tailstock work and possibly center drilling and that type of operation.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this three-part series, and in particular this final part 3 about the quick change gearbox. Now for a little extra credit, so stay with me for about 2 more minutes. Here's a little extra credit for you, and I forgot to mention this in the earlier videos, but you would be well advised to understand what I'm going to tell you right now. Now, as you know, this lathe is set up as a Model B, and that's all about the apron here that is different than the Model C. So if you have a Model C and you are using the half nut lever to either thread or to just feed for longitudinal feed, there is no cross feed, if you crash the machine, that is, you run the tool into the chuck and have a major crash, you are going to strip a gear or do some kind of damage, because the half nut is a positive engagement on the lead screw. However, if you are using the clutch on a Model A or B for either longitudinal or cross feed, the clutch will slip to some extent. It also depends on how tightly you make the clutch knob as you engage it, but it can slip the way a clutch did on my 51 Buick Straight 8, and because of that slippage, again, you have some protection and it will not strip the gears.